In today's episode, we're joined by Grace Frohlich. Grace is a seasoned digital marketing specialist with nearly a decade of expertise in SEO. Currently serving as the Senior SEO Manager at BrainLabs, Grace has distinguished herself in the industry through her forward-thinking approach and robust leadership abilities. Known for her skills in managing comprehensive marketing programs from the ground up, she consistently delivers successful outcomes. She has been featured in prominent marketing blogs and taken part in Moz's Whiteboard Friday. Her consistent drive to education and willingness to share her knowledge with others has cemented her reputation as a leader in the digital marketing field. Join us today as Grace talks about SEO website maturity audits and how they are often overlooked when developing an SEO strategy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by FireUsMarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. Welcome to the show, Grace.
Thanks, Eli. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. I've read a bunch of your blogs throughout the blogosphere. I've watched your Whiteboard Fridays, and
Oh, great.
yeah, so I've seen you speak at conferences. Those are on YouTube as well, and I'm real excited to dive in and learn a little bit more about you on a personal level, as well as have you teach us about website maturity audits. So let's jump in and talk about who Grace is first. So where are you from? Where'd you grow up? How'd you go from there to where you're at now and getting into the digital world?
Yeah, so if you couldn't tell from my accent, I'm from California. San Diego, specifically.
Yeah.
I grew up there. I went to college there. So spent most of my youth in San Diego.
Mhm.
And then along the way, I moved out to New York, actually, where I spent about 10 years of my life. And then now I'm based in London.
Nice.
So moved around quite a bit.
At what point did you get introduced into the digital world? At what when you were younger, were you like, oh, I'm definitely
Mhm.
gonna be an SEO, or was it at some point during college? Walk me through that journey.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, SEO was never on my radar
Mhm.
as, a teen or a young adult. I honestly didn't even know what it was until my 30s. So I started my career in fashion marketing
Mm.
in New York. I mentioned before, I spent about 10 years there working in fashion marketing. I mostly did product development,
Mhm.
so very different from what I do now.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I did that. And after 10 years, I decided I didn't want to do it anymore.
So is fashion marketing what took you to New York then?
Yes, yeah, it is.
Do you feel like that marketing background sort of lent towards going into what
Mm,
you're at now?
probably indirectly.
Okay.
Um, yeah, the type of work that I used to do was much more like traditional marketing.
Mm.
Nothing like digital marketing
Mhm.
or SEO or anything like that. Um, so I guess I wanted something completely different
Mhm.
from what I was doing. Um, I took about 7 or 8 months to figure that out, to be honest.
Okay.
I researched different digital roles. I guess I kind of gravitated towards something digital
Mhm.
because I felt like there was a lot of growth there,
Yeah.
in terms of career, a lot more opportunities. And yeah, I was just looking at like what how can I use my transferable skills
Yeah.
to like sidestep into something different. Yeah, so I researched a lot. I applied for internships, talked to some people who are already in that space. Yeah, and eventually I landed on an internship in SEO
Hmm.
over the summer. And yeah, the rest is history, I guess.
How far into that internship or into your SEO career did it like a light bulb switch on saying like,
Mm.
this is definitely what I'm gonna do long term?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know if I've thought about it before, but I think even like a few weeks into my internship, I interned at AMSIV. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a digital agency based in New York. At the time, it was called Path Interactive. They were acquired, but anyway, I think they have a very good summer internship program. They do teach all their interns a lot about not just SEO, but overall digital space, including paid search, social, etc. So I felt it was really interesting, and I think even a few weeks into it, I had a good feeling about it. It's
Hmm.
almost like, oh, I'm like really interested in this, and I would like voluntarily do more research on my own. I would try to read everything I could about whatever subjects we were talking about, just to try to learn more, really.
But you've definitely become an expert. I can tell that. What drives you to continue to be better and educate yourself in this area?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people would say this. SEO is like ever evolving, always changing. You really have to keep up. You know, essentially Google makes the rules,
Hmm.
whether you like it or not. So whenever, they have a core algorithm update, or, they make some press release about a certain function,
Hmm.
um, or best practice for SEO, we have to kind of keep up with it, in order to service, our website or better service our clients. So, yeah, even if, you know, it is a lot of it takes a lot of time to keep up
Hmm.
with all of that, but, I think that's the thing I'm most interested in. Um, it's never, like, monotonous work.
Hmm.
You're always, on your toes.
So the constant change is what drives you.
Yeah, I would say that just the underlying, you know, factor
Yeah.
that drives me. Um, I just find the whole thing, like, very interesting.
And I appreciate that about you. I think what sets all of the people in this series apart from just like normal SEOs that just like work at an agency is that you have that drive to learn, that drive to be better, that drive to learn, to be at the top of your game. And I feel like, sadly, I feel like a lot of agencies are sort of this
Mhm,
conveyor belt of things where if you're, you do step one, I'll do step two, you do step three, and you don't really learn the full scope and importance of SEO.
mhm,
And I really appreciate the interviews that I've been on, and this one especially, just learning, about your drive. And I think more SEOs need to have that
mhm,
drive to be better and learn more uh, in the field so that they can better service their clients or their in-house or wherever they're working, instead of just keeping it very basic. Basic SEO is sort of outdated.
yeah, I really appreciate your saying that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah, of course, SEO, I guess, is like any kind of other job,
Yeah.
office job or remote job. Um, and I'm not saying that there aren't people who, don't have that kind of interest or that
Sure.
level of
Yeah.
drive, but, you know, and I mean, I'm certainly not in it for the money. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Grace, what are you currently working on that excites you?
Oh gosh. I will say something recently. Not I'm not working on it currently, but
Okay.
a recent project I did work on for a client was this was maybe like 7, 8 months ago. I led a project researching Google SGE,
Yeah.
so search generative engine.
Hmm.
Now it's called AIO,
Yeah.
or AI overviews. Our client wanted to know what the potential impact would be for their site, for their core keywords, once the AI rolled out. Um, so it was really interesting because I got to kind of set the framework for how that project went. Because It's never been done, at least at BrainLabs, my agency. So I kind of really set up that project, kind of looked at, what are we measuring? How do we kind of approach this project? So that was super interesting for me because, again,
Yeah.
like it's really like pioneering that um that kind of work, um that it's really new, and we're all learning as we go.
hmm
So yeah, I mean it's probably what a lot of people are experiencing with AI now.
I think a lot of people have questions around that. So can you enlighten us on some of the stuff you've learned from that project?
Yeah. So that project specifically, we analyzed top 150 keywords. Not a large data set,
hmm
but it's keywords that the client cared about.
Yeah.
Looking at, what how prevalent were they in SGE?
hmm
At the time we used the SGE testing platform.
hmm
This was before it was rolled out in search engines. So we tested it periodically to see what showed up, what kind of links appeared as well, how many mentions they got, like the brand got
hmm
within the results. Um, and it was just very interesting to kind of see the see the results evolve over time. Like it was like evolving in real time for
Yeah.
us. It was never, almost never the same every time we kind of checked in
Hmm.
with that data. So that was really, really interesting for us. Um, yeah, I can't really divulge like specifics,
For sure.
just for like client privacy, but
Yeah.
um, it actually was really validating when I talked to other SEOs and even went to like Brighton SEO conference,
hmm
saw different presentations that other SEOs had, and a lot of the results that we saw for this client were similar with what they were seeing. So that was really validating for us.
Hmm. Did you find any like nuggets where you're like, oh, if you have schema markup, you're more likely to show up here, or trying to think like if you're on Reddit a bunch, then you're more likely. Did you find any golden nuggets like that that could be more broadly talked about?
uh, Not schema specifically,
Okay.
but one kind of key thing, or I guess pattern, we did see was at the time, if the client was ranking in the top 10 results
hmm
organically, then they largely were not showing up in SGE,
Hmm.
and vice versa. So if the client was not showing in the top 10, they would show up in SGE. So, and that was really consistent with what other SEOs were saying at the time as well.
Interesting.
I know Google recently kind of changed their mind about that.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think it was, um, you don't really know like how their algorithm works. But
hmm
m- my my own thought on
hmm
that was Google is trying to diversify their results. So if the client was very prominent on page one, then they're going to diversify the SGE result by showing other brands
Hmm.
in that result, which I think makes sense. You don't want to see like 5 results from the same website on Google, right?
Sure.
So, but yeah, that was probably one of the key takeaways from that.
I can understand the diversity part of it. I also think it seems a little bit contradictory because that's telling us that
Mhm.
their current search engine is not actually delivering us the best results. So we're going to give you uh, results 11 through 100 or whatever as
Yeah.
ranking number one. So that's interesting. I'd love to see how that evolves over time. The AI stuff has
So would
been
I.
fascinating, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's jump into the tactical side of this podcast, and let's
Hmm.
talk through some SEO maturity audits. So, first, just at a high level, if I'm a business owner sitting back listening to this, or if I'm like an up and coming SEO and want to learn, let's talk about what is an SEO maturity audit and why should I care about it?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I don't know that, a lot of business owners know what it is or have heard of a maturity audit or website maturity,
Hmm.
but it is really, really important to understand and keep in mind because it could potentially impact uh, like how you perform, even like forecasted performance. It
Hmm.
it kind of underlines that depending on how mature your website is. So essentially, the audit part, the maturity audit, it's a framework
Hmm.
really, and the aim of it is to determine how developed your website and thus your business is within your industry. Um, so and there's different pillars on how you would kind of determine the maturity of the site, and I can go into that in a little bit more detail. I actually spoke about this topic at Brighton
Hmm.
in 2022. I don't
Nice.
know that there's a recording out there, but there are slides.
Hmm.
So if you want to check out the slides from my conference talk, you can.
Okay, so a maturity audit is basically looking at a website and saying, is it mature in a healthy way, right? Has it been around
Hmm.
for a long time? Is it sort of a healthy website? How does somebody determine whether their website is mature or not?
Yes. So this is where the framework comes in. Um, I would think of it um like you're doing like a taste test.
Okay.
Like let's say like you're a restaurant and you sell pizza. You want to know like your maturity of your business within the pizza restaurant space in your city.
Mm-hmm.
So you would kind of build out a taste test of sorts, with certain criteria. So the criteria would be like taste and texture and mouthfeel,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that's
Okay.
important. And then you would go around and taste the different pizzas in your area, and then like kind of score them. So think about it like that,
Okay.
but for your website. So I mentioned the key pillars of the framework. Um, and if you check out my slides, you'll see what those pillars are. But essentially, you check for technical compliance of the
Okay.
site, site speed or UX, user experience. You check for competitors in your vertical, on-site content, link profile or backlink profile. You look at search opportunity for your industry, and then this one's kind of optional. You can check for tracking
Mm-hmm.
or measuring performance. So those are the 7 kind of key pillars for this framework. And again, you kind of lay out the criteria for each of those pillars, and then you rate or you score your website based on those criteria.
So is the criteria different for every website, every company? Is it just basically what they
Hmm.
want it to be? Here's the baseline, how we do, or is there a certain like baseline that you would recommend they look for and say, I'm above this line or I'm below this line?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point because I would say there is definitely a baseline. So, tech compliance, there is a baseline for like how a website works
Mm-hmm.
and things that could block your website from working well or ranking well, performing well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely that baseline. Um, but there's other things to consider. Like if you're in a specific industry,
Mm-hmm.
you should probably focus on different things. Personally, I work the most on e-commerce websites, so sites that, sell consumer goods at large scale, like enterprise scale.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have that kind of website, there's other things you should be focusing on as well, such as, how well your product listing pages perform versus your, product detail pages. Um, so depending on your vertical, there's other areas of focus. Um, yeah.
Okay. So 7 pillars, and each of those pillars seem like you could dig in um, quite a bit, right? So can we
Yeah.
can we take just one of those? Let's just since you're big into ecom, let's just take an e-commerce website, just the product page,
Hmm.
and break it down for me. Like, are there specific tools that I use? Are there templates that I can look for? How do I know? Because here, the reason I'm asking this is because if I'm an up and coming SEO, like I don't really know where to start, right?
Hmm.
If I am
Hmm.
a business owner and maybe I can't afford an in-house person or an agency or don't know the questions to ask, and I'm listening to this thinking, how can I do this? So maybe can we dive a little bit
Yeah.
more into the how and just in that specific scenario?
Yeah, definitely. So okay, if you're an e-com site, the biggest watch outs that I would look for is, mass duplication across your site.
Okay.
Um, Especially, product listing or product detail pages. So that's kind of sitting in like site content pillar,
Mm-hmm.
even search opportunity pillar. So let's say that you sell like graphic t-shirts
Mm-hmm.
on your site. Um, what you would look for are possible duplicates of like the page titles, the headers, any kind of like product descriptions on your site. Um, if you're seeing that out at a mass scale, like a lot of duplication across different pages, then that could potentially be an issue. Just because that's going to affect how your overall site performs.
What tools do you recommend I use to find that? And then once I've found it, how do I go about
Mm.
fixing it?
Uh, Nice. I think it definitely depends who you ask.
Okay.
Personally, I really like Screaming Frog.
Mhm.
Just a default
Yeah.
crawler
Mhm.
kind of. Um, it's just really easy to use. And they have, page duplication reports that it's really easy. Once you crawl the site, it'll you like go navigate to that section and you can download every kind of duplicate page there is, and then you can kind of investigate that further.
Okay.
That's what I like to use.
Yeah, I think Screaming Frog is pretty well known in the industry for sure.
Yeah.
Sightbulb
Mhm.
is another one that I've heard over the last couple of podcasts that we've talked through. So okay, so then you recommend I go do a crawl on Screaming Frog. I go to those sections, I export that data, and then sort of one by one. If it's duplicate titles, I just go one by one and I fix it. If it's what do you recommend on e-commerce? I think one of the very common issues for duplicate content is how they structure their the left-hand sidebar where there's like filters and sorting and all of that, because you
Mhm.
have a million different types of category pages showing the exact
Yeah.
same thing. How do you address something like that?
Yeah. Oh, that's a tough one. That really getting into the weeds on this one. I will caveat this by saying that really the aim of a maturity audit is not to go into that much detail
Okay.
at the initial stage. It's really looking at like a high level how much of an issue, a potential issue this is.
Hmm.
So once you kind of, find all those duplicate pages, look at how many, like what percentage of your site this is happening in,
Hmm.
and then kind of gauge, okay, how much of an issue is this? And then again, like I said, you want to give it a score.
Okay.
I like to use like a 1 to 5 scale.
Hmm.
1 being, really immature, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
or a really big issue, and then 5 being like, oh, the perfect website.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maturity is more about like the health of your website, the SEO overall SEO of your website, as opposed to like how long it's been around, how many links it has over time, stuff like that. Or does it combine both?
It's kind of it goes hand in hand, I would say. Because usually older websites that have, content that has content for like, 15 years ago, 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
normally you'll be able to see that when you do an audit like this. So, for example, I mentioned a link profile pillar,
Mm-hmm.
or looking at backlinks.
Mm-hmm.
Older websites will have a ton of backlinks because they've built up that authority over time. Other sites have been linking to that site for years and years. So yes, I would think it really goes hand in hand. Yeah, if you check like the profile of your site and you find, oh, there's it's like a million links,
Mm-hmm.
then that's probably a good sign. Um, but there's definitely other indications as well.
How often do you recommend business owners do an audit like this?
Oh gosh, I would say, again, depending on like your industry,
Mm-hmm.
at least every year, like just to like check. Well, like if you go to the doctor for an annual checkup, um, it's really good practice to do something like this. Plus, you can compare how you're doing from last year,
Mm-hmm.
whether you've grown or not. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
So keep those baselines, look at it from last year, see
Hmm.
if you're better or worse in each of those 7 pillars.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
and try to improve in each one, right? And maybe you could take a handful of them
Hmm.
and say, we're focusing on these this year. Let's make these better. What are
Yes,
what are some common red flags or mistakes that you see people making when doing an audit like this?
I would say probably it used to be like site speed
Mm-hmm.
or user experience. Um, I think mostly because that is really hard to measure, for one thing. And the other thing is it can be difficult to um, improve because you really do
Mm-hmm.
need your development team, your tech team
Yeah.
to buy into that. Um, I will say in recent years, that has been a bit easier because I think mostly because um a lot of clients, people, upper management, high level C-suite clients understand the importance now of
Mm-hmm.
SEO and your site speed, um for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they've read some SEO blog or articles and,
Yeah.
oh, this is site speed is really important. So they probably took that away and said, okay, dev team, this is your KPI for the
Yeah.
next couple years. You have to like meet these standards. So I would say like that's probably a big reason. It's a lot easier now.
Okay, so yeah, I would agree. Probably number one is site speed. What do you think number two or number three are?
I would say I think something that maybe people overlook is content
Okay.
on their site, especially like informational type content. Um, at least in my experience, it can be challenging to get buy-in on a lot of like non-branded content
Mm-hmm.
on the site, even though from an organic perspective, it's very beneficial for your site and it can really boost your performance. Um, I think the biggest reason is that it takes time. it's not it's not instant. You won't see results as quickly as if you say like create like paid ads, paid
Mm-hmm.
content. Like you put the ad up, you see the results immediately. But yeah, on-site content, organic content is really underrated.
So you have this framework that you built out and your team follows it. Um,
Hmm.
what is the process? So your team goes through and does this audit, and then how do you decide what you focus on to improve the organic visibility of each client?
Yeah. So there is like a step-by-step process, an internal process that we go through. There's like a spreadsheet template
Okay.
essentially, where almost like a tech audit, where
Mm,
there's like it's a checklist, but it's a lot more top level.
hmm.
We don't go really that deep into each section. Again, we only want to look at high level things because at this stage we want to get this audit done quickly
Hmm.
so that we can see where the biggest opportunities are, which sections we should be focusing on for that year.
Hmm.
So, so yeah, essentially it's a checklist. Each section gets a score. Yet each subsection gets a score.
Hmm.
Um, and then we tally those scores up and see how they compare. And I guess the lowest scores, each section's lowest scores will decide. Okay, these are the priority.
Do you in that process and in that spreadsheet, do you have any gauge for like amount of impact? Because you may get a really low score in
Mm,
an area, but
hmm.
the impact isn't that big. How do you navigate through those waters?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Um, and to be honest, it can be hard to know, especially if you're working on a brand new site, like a brand new client.
Hmm.
A lot of these audits that we do are for brand new clients, so that we can kind of set a benchmark for
Hmm.
those clients. Um, so most of the time we don't really know the website that well. Um, but I will say once we do the audit, and kind of present back to the clients, okay,
Hmm.
these are the areas of opportunity. Um, we have a discussion
Okay.
about, what should be prioritized based on this audit. And then, a benefit of kind of collaborating with the client is they know the site, they know their customers more than we do.
Yeah.
They can kind of feed into that and say, and the best clients are the ones that have those kind of insights and want to collaborate with you.
Hmm.
Um, so they'll, say, oh, actually, like this and this, I think, we should prioritize because of XYZ. But maybe this section, we won't be able to get buy-in because of pushback from,
Yeah.
separate team, or, you know, um, maybe C-suite. They don't want to focus on that area this year. So it's kind of a back and forth process after the audit is done, and then eventually we kind of land on a strategy.
That makes sense. It's funny you bring up that sometimes there's pushback or politics internally. One of the
Yeah.
episodes in this series talks about that, talks about how to overcome that, what data
Mm.
to look at, who to talk to. It was a fun
Oh,
conversation to have because it is an issue, especially from an
nice.
agency standpoint. You're like, here's what you should do, and they come back and they're like, sorry, so and so doesn't want that.
Yeah, yep. Oh, I would love to hear that podcast actually.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to like figure things out, new ways of kind of getting buy-in with clients. Um, because really like the work that we do is half the battle,
Hmm.
and the other half is getting clients to agree.
In my last company, I was over digital product management as well as digital marketing, and it made sense in that way because I could say, here's the marketing. Like we looked at the data, then it went to the marketing, or it went to the development, and then it went to the marketing. It went back to the data, and it was this big circle. But our
Yeah.
our product managers were able to prioritize the stuff that helped marketing, whereas a lot of times they're separate teams, and you're like, hey, this is really important, but it depends on where it falls in priority for their
Hmm.
KPIs for their team, right? They're completely different departments,
Yes.
and it can be a
Yes.
struggle. It
Yeah.
also, I think it's fair to mention that a lot of C-levels don't really understand the importance of SEO, I think, like they should. There's a lack of
Mm-hmm.
education, and getting buy-off on that sometimes can be really difficult. So it's a very fascinating podcast. You should definitely check it out.
Yeah, I will check that out.
Nice.
Thanks.
Okay, so you mentioned content a minute ago. How does
Hmm.
content decay play
Oh,
into your audit? Because you said sometimes you look at brand new sites. Sometimes you look at sites that have been around for 10 to 20 years,
hmm.
right? And I
Yeah.
imagine you're looking at, these blog posts from 10 years ago. You're going to have to do some kind of analysis and say, do we keep it? Do we get rid of it? Do we redirect it? Do we update? Walk me through that.
Oh my gosh. I feel like you're narrating my life right now.
Everything that you have to go through.
I
Yeah.
literally just did like a content audit for a client that had their site is so old. Like their content is some of it is like over 10 years old.
Wow.
So um yeah, I think within the site content pillar, you can have a criteria
Mhm.
for, publish date of content. And you can easily kind of extract that. Well, I say easily. If the page indicates when that content was published, you can custom extract it with Screaming Frog.
Mhm.
And that's what we do with most of our clients, especially if we, need to look at content. So check publish date, you know, how old is that content? Does that content still get traffic or
Mhm.
conversions? And you kind of like rate it that way. A lot of times, if there's a lot of older content that's kind of the traffic's decreasing
Mhm.
over time, then that's an indication of,
Mhm.
yeah, probably there's some content decay there.
Yeah, and you have to look at it. Is it an article specifically for 2024, right? But we're
Hmm.
looking 10 years away. Is it
Right.
evergreen content? Is it informational? Is it salesy? Whatever, right? And so that can be very difficult. I did a podcast with Chris Long. If you're not following him on LinkedIn, you
Oh
should
yeah,
definitely follow
I
him.
do. I definitely follow him.
Yeah, so he posted after we did the podcast, like the next day, he posted about something he talked about on the podcast, which, if I remember correctly, was the New York Times, how they do
Mm,
um their sort of crawl depth. So they have articles that were written in like the 1950s and back, right? Obviously, it
yeah.
wasn't digital at that time, but it's now digital, and so
Hmm.
they have a section at the bottom of the page that says every year 1950, 1960, 1970, like whatever,
Oh my
right? So all
god.
of those years, and those click to one page that says here's the month, January, February, March, and then it's from the month, it's the day, and then you see all of the articles that were on that day, and every single article that they've ever written or ever have ever
Hmm.
made digital is 5 clicks away from the homepage.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so in those cases, it makes sense to lay it out like that. But if it's like about the iPhone 4, like it doesn't matter if that ranks anymore. So you're not gonna care about that, right? When you're going through the content audit, do you more often find yourself recommending that they update their articles and make them
Hmm.
better, or just leave them how they are, or shut them down and redirect them? What do you feel like is the most common recommendation for these older articles?
At least in my experience working with sites. No, it could be dependent on like the sites that I've personally worked on.
Yeah.
Um, Almost all those sites content, um, there there's room for improvement. Let's
Hmm.
just say that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's really indicative of, you know, companies or businesses that seek SEO
Hmm.
services because again, they underestimate how important content is,
Yeah.
organic content is for their
Hmm.
site. Um, Oftentimes it really helps like drive their overall performance. And I think it's hard. It can be hard to prove that or to like showcase that
Yeah.
to clients or business owners. But yeah, I think if, your content is older and underperforming, or your content is unoptimized, um, or you lack content, like you
Hmm.
don't have sites that don't have a lot of content, um, then yeah, their overall organic performance is going to kind of feel that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think definitely more importance should be placed on content.
How often do you do a content audit nowadays and find that the majority of it is written by AI and it's low quality and
Mm.
needs to be updated?
Yeah, personally, I haven't worked with clients who rely on AI content. Which I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
um, I mean, there's definitely use cases for it, having AI content on your site.
Hmm.
Um, but you know, BrainLabs as an agency, we set a certain standard for our work and the work we present to clients. We we always say, AI is definitely a good tool.
Hmm.
We use it, we kind of incorporate it into the content process,
Yeah.
definitely, because it can help speed up the process, um, and do it better at scale.
Yeah.
But of course, we always inject that human element to it, such as like checking content briefs, checking it over, or have is even like we have like freelance copywriters actually write the content,
Hmm.
instead of having AI generate the content. Because I think there's definitely, there's a advantage of doing that in the long term.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like AI is really important to understand from an SEO standpoint. I think it's okay to use it to write some content. I think that you do need to
Hmm.
humanize it. I've had some clients come in where it's just like copy and paste directly from the AI. Same
Oh
number of
god.
paragraphs, same number of characters per paragraph, same like every blog post, and you can see that it really
Yeah.
hurts their site and stuff. But I love AI, and we've
Yeah.
done some podcasts on AI and SEO and some of the tools that are being built to help crawl the website and to look for the technical stuff and to
Hmm.
analyze content decay and to analyze, how to better your content and stuff. I think a lot of that is going to revolutionize how we look at content. But for sure it needs to be humanized and it needs to add value. I think that's
Hmm.
the bottom line, is it needs to add value. Grace,
Yeah.
so what else did I miss? So if I'm a business owner again sitting here listening, what other
Hmm.
advice do you have for me or these up and coming SEOs when it comes to these website maturity audits?
Other advice. I would say, oh gosh, that's such a good one. I would say, I know I talked about kind of a seventh. There's seven pillars, right? The
Hmm.
seventh pillar, which I think can be optional, is the tracking or measurement.
Yeah.
Um, I think, you know, whether or not you're doing a maturity audit, you should definitely still make sure that you're tracking your work on the site. So any kind of work that you do or implement on the site, even if it's, even if not you're not actively working on something for SEO related, um, it definitely helps to track what you're doing
Mm.
on your site, uh, especially GA4, which is basically you have to customize everything.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but
Hmm.
but if you kind of take the time to set that up, then things will be easier down the line. So, for example, if you want to track specific clicks on your site, conversions on your site, and then like track that over time.
Mhm.
Let's say you're working on a section of the site and you want to see, how many users click through. Set that up in your analytics and track that.
Mhm.
It's really saves you the headache of trying to figure it out later.
Yeah, especially if you want to set the baselines like you're talking about. If you want to look at your
Yeah.
year-over-year
Hmm.
stuff, set your own baselines, whether you're comparing to other people or not. Make sure that you're tracking to be better than yourself year over year.
Yeah, exactly. You're in competition with yourself,
Yeah, that's right.
essentially.
Yeah. Well, Grace, I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast today and enlighten us around SEO, these maturity audits. I love the framework, and I'd recommend everybody go and check out the Whiteboard Fridays and I think it was the Brighton SEO. Go check those out for Grace, and I'll make sure what I'll do is I'll write a blog post about this, and I'll put your contact information, your LinkedIn and stuff, so if people want to get in touch with you, they can do that as well. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much, Eli. Had a great chat. Great time on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. And to everyone else who's listening out there, we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.